And when people are traumatized, I feel like the image that comes to me is that they're tied in knots and they don't know, quite what's going on. And they're uncomfortable in a variety of ways. They're uncomfortable physically, emotionally, often enough socially. They're responding in ways that are peculiar or even alien to them, and they don't know where it's coming from. And I put my arms like this because people who are traumatized are often so shut down. And I think long term, the consequences of the freeze response, the consequences of being in situations that are overwhelming and inescapable, and often enough repeated or prolonged over a period of time, that in causing a freeze response, which is a life-saving response that vertebrates have when they're in this kind of inescapable and overwhelmingly dangerous situation, when it continues, either because the situation continues or because there's a perpetuation of it in their minds and bodies, that's the most, I think, serious biological consequence, partly because it's so disabling, and it removes us from the capacity to feel. It removes us from the capacity to connect with those people in those situations that can be healing.
They're so shut down, they're so tied in knots that there are resources around them, and yet they're not able to reach out and access those easily.
Right, and that's right. And then the other part of it is they don't recognize, when you're in that state, that other people are experiencing the same thing. So I work during and after wars, for example, or climate-related disasters. And intellectually, everybody knows that everybody else has been affected, but it feels like they're the only one.
Many times when people are coming into a place where they're ready to do the work, they're ready to start that opening up process, they're thinking that the only way is just by themselves or reading a book or doing one-on-one work. And yet part of what I do, and I know that's part of what you do, is like you bring in the community, you bring in the connection with other people so that they can see that, oh, I'm not alone. Others are going through this as well. And yet also obviously doing that in a way that you're not adding to the burden of feeling everyone else's overwhelm, but you're able to see it and experience it in a way that you can relate to others. And that starts to break through that feeling of it's all me and I'm all alone.
Yeah, and that's right. And it's also changing the definition of what trauma is, changing it from something that's a purely medical phenomenon that requires treatment and perhaps pharmacological treatment, changing it to a universal human experience in which people can become aware of whatever trauma or challenges they've experienced and share them with one another. And you probably do know this, in indigenous societies, if you had a minor problem, physical, mental, or spiritual, you went to your granny, your grandmother, or somebody else's granny. But if you had a major problem, life-threatening illness, a psychosis, if you'd been in combat, you would go to the official healer, and the official healer would bring people together because it was understood, whatever that official healer was called, whether called curandero or sangoma or wise woman or medicine man, that healer understood that in addition to the pharmacopoeia and in addition to the particular rituals that she or he might use, that in order to heal the trauma, we needed to come together with a group and reestablish the connection with our own nature and with the nature of the social, ecological, and spiritual world. And the group was the vehicle to make that happen.